Mike Bianco joining us now on the Raptors Music and Food Hotline. Mike, I've got to ask this. I don't know that I have. You've been doing this 20, 21 years now in the SEC. They still mispronounce your name every time in Hoover during the post game press conferences. About half the visiting PAs around the league. At what point did you stop correcting people?
Um, I haven't been big on that. I remember my first year. So here's a long story from a long time ago. When I was a junior at LSU, my first year there, I was a junior college transfer, and they always would say Bianco, and of course, my mom got mad, and so I had to change it to Bianco. So Bill Franquez, the longtime sports information director there, was RSID at the time. And he changed it there, but I've had it a lot of different ways. Bianco more often, but Bianca,
Oh,
we get a lot of them, so it doesn't bother me anymore.
yeah, it's the one in Hoover that I always laugh at and go, it's the same moderator most years. You would think over the time they'd eventually figure that out
I
from
think
one
sometimes
time.
it's a power move to let them know that, hey, listen, you're still a little guy. I don't care how long you've been here. We're going to mispronounce your name, and if you don't like it, tough.
Yeah. How have you adjusted to Zoom? I mean, we were just talking about it a minute ago, the light and the dark and everything. And I mean, I sort of talk for a living. I'll be honest, I don't feel as connected to the person I'm talking to. I'm still struggling with it a little bit. How's it been in your world?
Well, I think good and bad, like everything. I think through this pandemic, we're all learning. Some of us, not by choice, but getting a little more innovative with our technology, and these are things that have been out there, but we've never used before. And now, in some ways, it's been good for us, and to be able to Zoom some recruits or to have meetings, and certainly through this, we've needed it, with our team and some guys in quarantine, and try to stay connected. And I think, not that this is any big revelation for anybody, but I think over the last 6-8 months, and trying to, whatever business that you've had, the way that you've had to adjust, via Zoom, and business people not flying to certain places. I think when the CEOs start to understand that, hey, we can do the same thing and not actually be there in person, and how much money we can save, I think this is the way the world's turning to. I'm with you. I think there's nothing that can replicate, the in-person conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's much better than a phone. It's much better than a conference call. The thing that I get frustrated now with is you get on a Zoom, and then, the people don't put the video on. And so now
Okay.
it just becomes the conference call. You just see Chase Parham up on the
Sure.
screen. You don't even know if Chase is even there anymore, because
Sure.
he's got his thing muted, and, he's sitting there, cooking dinner, and he's not really paying attention. So that's a little frustrating, but again, I think it's a great way to stay connected that we didn't know before.
Can you use it in recruiting anyway, or is it strictly different things, or what is it?
No, we have, and again, it still goes with the rules. So really, to try to not get into the weeds of the NCAA rules, but the kids that you can call, the kids that you can text, you certainly can Zoom. And so through this, because of the dead period and not being able to kids take visits, as a coach is talking to them, it's one thing to talk to a kid on the phone, but eventually they would come here. Eventually they'd be sitting right behind me in the office. And so, we've had some of those presentations, where, sat with the family and did the visit this way. And that's a lot better than just talking to them on the phone.
I was going back through a story I wrote a few years ago on you about your hire at Ole Miss, and I ran across the tidbit that I think you told me, and then I asked Cammy about it, that when you got done with LSU, you decided to go into financial planning there for a minute or two. Was that something that you thought at the time it was going to be a potential long-term deal? Were you just kind of waiting on a guy like Jim Wells to call? What was sort of the situation there?
No, I think the story behind it is I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college on either side.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like a lot of young kids, my mom and dad told me growing up that you're going to go to college. And if you go to college, you'll get a degree. And if you get a degree, you'll get a better job than the kid that didn't. and so you'll be better off. But to an 18-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, I grew up in middle class family, and be honest with you, I got everything that I needed and probably most of the things that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I get this degree, right, this golden ticket, then I'm going to have much more than this. I'm going to be rich. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what job I'm going to get, but I'll be better off than my parents. They're telling me, just get this golden ticket, this degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went to college in the 80s, everybody seemed to be a business major and be in some type of finance. And so when I got out, I went to work for a company called First Investors Corporation in Tampa, and hated it. Every day driving over the bridge over the bay into Tampa with a coat and tie on, and just couldn't wait till 5 o'clock, couldn't wait till Friday, just couldn't wait till it to be over. And I started realizing, one, I'm not making any money at this. And number two is I can't do this for the next 40 years of my life. There's just no way. And the only thing that I really enjoyed doing was not just playing baseball, but being part of it, being at the field. And I used to work a lot of Coach Burtman's camps and whatnot. And, I remember him asking me that I should be a coach. So then I called him up, when I had this epiphany that I wasn't going to be a very successful financial planner. And he said, hey, you need to call Jim Wells because he's looking for a graduate assistant. And that's how it started. And so August 1990, I went up to Natchitoches, Louisiana, and started becoming a baseball coach.
You talk about money and different things, though. Is that one of the reasons you didn't even just for a couple of weeks give it a shot or whatever it was when you got drafted? I mean, was there ever the thought of, hey, if I was going to be around baseball, I at least could have done that for a minute?
I think that back then it was when I graduated, I caught, people know Ben McDonald now as the announcer,
Sure.
on SEC Network, but he was the number one pick in the draft. And so, people see scouts at our games. When we played, when I caught Ben, there's literally 50, 60 scouts. I mean, there was the area guy, the cross checker, GMs, there was scouting directors. And so I caught in front of everybody. I was catching the guy that they were there to see. And I had been drafted 2 previous times and elected to continue to go to school. And now that I was, finishing my eligibility, I get drafted again. But LSU had this thing called ninth semester aid. And so if you didn't sign a professional contract, they would keep you on scholarship until you graduated, which was a great deal. And from a kid that couldn't afford out-of-state tuition and all of that if I signed, basically they were going to give me $1,000 and a plane ticket to go play on some low A-ball team. And I had a summer semester and a fall semester that if I just stayed and didn't sign, LSU would have paid for that. If I signed, it was actually going to cost me a lot more money because I would have forfeited that 9th semester aid. And I knew I wasn't going to play in the big leagues. Could I have been the Bull Durham story and hung out a few years and helped some of the younger guys? And really, I think that's what they wanted me to do. Yeah, because I was an older 22-year-old catcher that could help some of the young guys, but I was a 39th round draft choice, if I remember right. And I didn't want to do that. We had just finished 3rd in the College World Series, and I just didn't want to remember baseball, in a bad way. I was happy with, everything that happened in my baseball life, and I didn't need to be miserable and hate baseball. And I knew a lot of guys went into professional baseball with the dream and hopes of making it to the big leagues. But
Sure.
like most of them, they're not going to make it to the big leagues, and they ended up hating baseball. They ended up, just really quitting, and I didn't want that to happen.
So you get the graduate assistant job at Northwestern State. I mean, did it take being getting to LSU and kind of moving on? I mean, when did you know, hey, this is actually a profession? I mean, when does it become, I'm going to do this or what? I mean, how do you kind of go there?
I don't know when that moment happened.
Yeah.
Northwestern State, was eye-opening because one, I was already poor financial planner, and so getting up to Northwestern State, I laugh. I say, I always say the joke, my first job at Northwestern State, I was there for 2 years, actually cost me about, $5,000 in student loans because as a graduate assistant, you got a $1,000 stipend each semester. That's all you got. Well, they gave me a dorm room. And so I was able to stay in the dorm room And tuition, can you imagine back in 1990, fall of 1990, was like $920 a semester at Northwestern State. And so with the $1,000 stipend, I would pay that, and I had $80 left over to buy a meal ticket at the cafeteria, and that's all I needed, and that's all I did. And so the next year, I was so tired of the dorm and being the old guy in the athletic dorm, and so I took a student loan out and rented an apartment for a year to kind of get out of the dorm life. And here's a little side note to that. One of my neighbors in my apartment complex was Greg Sankey. Greg Sankey was our compliance officer at Northwestern State when I was there. And so
Really?
so I've known Greg since 1990.
What year did you and Kimmy get married?
1992.
Okay,
So
so right at the end of that.
Yeah, August of 1992. So I did my 2 years at Northwestern State, got hired at LSU, and was going to start that fall. So I finished camp that summer with Coach Bertman and got married August 1st. We went to Destin for a couple days after the wedding because we couldn't afford anything. So we went to Destin and spent I don't know, 4 or 5 days down there. Came back and started work in 1992, and first year there we won the national championship in '93.
I think your first contract here was what, 75,000 a year or something like that. I mean, you got these $40 million stadium upgrades now. I'm not surprised, but would you have predicted that college baseball has become the business it is today?
I hear what you're saying. I don't know if I even look at it that way, as the business. I get the business side of it, and I know you've known me for such a long time that I understand how that works.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, if you're asking if I thought it could happen here, the answer is yes. And I knew that from the day that I stepped on campus. I knew we'd draw. I knew that we could bring, if you want to stay in that business realm, that we could bring a product here that people would embrace and love, and and the people would come. College baseball is a neat product. It's a neat thing. Even now, I just got a text yesterday from Janice Rupert, that from our marketing department, that we've sold 2,600 tickets in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
For ticket renewals, and that's 800 ahead of last year's that broke the record.
Sure.
At the same time frame. So I think the easy answer is, and I don't mean it egotistically, I learned from arguably the greatest college baseball coach ever, and he learned from Ron Frazier down in Miami, and how to do it. This is the system, and so we thought that could happen here. I think I'm probably more surprised of all the other places that it's happened.
Yeah, you in 2000. I mean, I don't know. You probably didn't even look past a couple of years. But if somebody said, "Hey, you're still going to be right here in 20 years," you're obviously going, "Well, it was pretty dang successful because they hadn't run me out of town yet." But at the same time, and you probably never thought, "Hey, I'm taking a job tomorrow, and it's the next 2 decades of my life, and where my kids are going to grow up."
Yeah, I don't think ever as a coach, one, that you should think that way.
Mm-hmm.
As far as financial planning, I learned that too much. You better, pay yourself, first, and, look to the future and put some money away and all of that. But as far as where are you going to be, I think as coaches, and not just in baseball, but in any other sport, I don't know any job if you think hey, I'm going to be here in 20 years. I'm going to be in the same job in the same company. So I don't think it's really that far fetched, but certainly not in the coaching profession. And, you just, the old take it one day at a time, right? Take it 1 year at a time. And it's, Oxford and Ole Miss has been very good for us.
You're still a pretty young man. How long do you want to do this? I mean, you've told me in the past you don't necessarily think you're Wayne Graham at 80 or anything.
No doubt. No, that's not going to happen. I don't know. We talk about it more now, Cammie and I, than we have in the past. And I think it's more, just kind of dreaming and guessing. I think, the thing that's difficult to answer that question is, where we are in our lives. You know, we have 3 kids that are in college. We got one, Catherine, that's still in high school, and she'll get to college. You know, certainly it'll be after they finish school. Uh, but then what will our life look like? You know,
Mhm.
talking to like Tim Corbin, where his kids are grown up, and it's different for him. You know, his wife travels with them a lot, and it's a different relationship. You know, I don't know what our life's going to look like, 7 years from now, 6 years from now, when maybe Catherine's done with college, and how I'm going to feel, and how physically I'm going to feel, and what my health is like, but my guess is somewhere in that 10 years, I think, somewhere, but I think it could go, a couple years either way, but I think 10 is safe, but somewhere between 60 and 65. I know I'm not a lifer. I know I want to do something after this, and I don't mean professionally. Maybe I want to do something, and that may push the clock up, my coaching career. But I don't, I want to retire. I want to, spend some time with my wife and travel. We don't get to do that. I'd like to, spend time with my grandkids and be able.
Mhm.
We have 5 kids, as you know, and not likely that they'll all be here in Oxford. So they'll be, all over the country, and I want to have the ability to be able to go see them and watch them play baseball, and be a part of their lives.
You and Kimmy made the decision, like we've talked about, written about, of none of your kids playing for you. Has that been harder as you expected, just on trying to catch all their games, on the fact that you are missing so much? I mean, what's that been like as a dad to just try to navigate that?
I don't know if it's been harder, with technology, and how much that's really gotten better over the last few years of streaming, and the SEC network, and the ACC network plus, or whatever they call it.
Mhm.
We've been able to watch, and the luxury for that is, that's when you become the dad, the parent. Like a lot of our kids, that parents are back home in Florida, Texas, or California, where they can't get here for every game. Uh, I'll get done, with our game, let's say, in the beginning of the year, maybe we play a 3 o'clock game against Memphis on a Tuesday. Usually by the time I'm walking in the locker room, Clem will somebody already have LSU or Louisville up on the TV in the locker room, on our, Apple TV, and we'll be watching it. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I'll check and I'll look at my phone to see if they even played, if they
Okay.
played and how they did. And, can I catch it? Drew came in and pinch hit in the 7th, so I can fast forward all the other stuff, because I'm the dad. I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not in it who's winning and who's losing. I just want to know how my kids did, right?
It was a huge internet thing. What was going through your body when Drew hits that home run?
Um, it's probably the most asked question beyond,
Sure.
your first question of how it all
Yeah.
came about. Why'd you guys make the decision? And the truth of the matter is, this is what I do, and it's
Yeah.
not, it's not me against Drew or me against Ben last year,
Sure.
uh, or if we end up playing, University of Louisiana, me against Sam. It's really just trying to be, do my job, be the head coach at Ole Miss, and if you go back to that time, people just see the home run. I'm not sure. Were you at the game?
I was not. No.
So if I remember right, so I'll try to get through it, quickly without boring you. I think we were losing something like 4-2,
Hmm.
but we knew LSU's bullpen, was maybe one of their Achilles that year,
Sure.
and knew that we had a shot, especially with the offense that we had, that year, that we could. We could do some damage late in the game. I think we had bases loaded, and at the time, trying to think who we had out on the mound, somebody in relief, and had Miller, hot in the bullpen, and then we go back out. We don't score with bases loaded. It's 4-2, but we're still going to get another chance. They get a guy on. I think they get him in scoring position. And I normally never do this. You probably know this by now. Our bullpen's kind of thin. It's good, but it's thin.
Mhm.
And the 2 main guys I think at the time are Miller and Caracci, and I don't want to use Miller in a game that I'm down by 2 on a
Sure.
Friday night, with 2 games remaining. But he's already hot. Just bring him in and get out of this fire that we're in right now. Well, we bring him in, they end up butting the guy over and getting a sac fly to go up 5-3. So now I'm like, I don't really want to warm somebody else up. Can we get out of this? I think there's 2 outs now, and he's facing Cabrera. Now Drew isn't even in the game,
Sure.
right? So now I'm obviously not feeling good. I got one of my main relievers out there in a 3-run deficit that doesn't look good for the Rebs. And we just got to get, well, Cabrera has a long at bat, full count. He ends up hitting a home run to go up, I want to say like 6-3 or 6-2. So
Mm.
now we're down by 4. So it's not likely that we're going to win. So now I push Roth down to the bullpen, but unbeknownst to me, they announced now batting Drew Bianco. Like he wasn't even on deck, and he'll tell you the story. Like he's sitting like in the tunnel there because Maneri doesn't bring those guys out because he doesn't want us to switch pitchers or whatnot. So I'm worried about just getting Miller off the field, and then they announce it, and of course the place, Alex Box, all the fans, they know what's happening. They know that, like, hey, now this is finally it. We didn't think we were going to see it tonight, but now Bianco versus Bianco. And I'm like, really? This is how it's finally going to happen? I've been answering these questions for a year, and now finally this is how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And, of course, it hits the first pitch out off the foul pole. And then everybody, was asking me afterwards, a bat flip, and you don't see that. He hits the ball and then you follow it. I didn't see any of that. And of course the place is going crazy. And I didn't really know what to think. At the time, I think I was like so frustrated. Now it's 7-2. The game's over. He hits the home run. The game ends. And, the bad part about it is, in baseball, you shake the coach's hand, but you don't see them. We go, we do the media, we get on the bus, go back to the hotel. It's about midnight by the time I realize I haven't even spoken to him. And so I text him, as I'm going to bed, I said, hey, congratulations. I'm really proud of you. Yeah. And he said, thanks, Dad. He says, that means a lot. And all by text. And he says, the weirdest, greatest moment of my life. And he tells the story because you got to remember he went to school with Dillard and Kessinger and all those guys. He's running around the bases and he couldn't look at him. He's running with his head down.
Yeah.
He said, "I was such an out of body experience that they tap helmets." He goes, like, I couldn't even feel my helmet. Like when he tapped helmets, he dropped his helmet. He was like, I was just like in another world. So.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where I become incredibly sentimental as a father. I mean, my daughter's 4, and I watch it and I go, it's the one negative of this. Like I said, I've known you 15 years. You're going to be completely professional in the moment, but everybody's kind of robbed of it a little bit. You know what I mean? That happens against anybody else, and it's a little different deal as a parent and a son and the whole.
And it's everybody looks to that moment, and it's one of the tough things that it's tough for my wife. Like last year when Louisville was here. Game 2, Ben struck out, to end the game, with the tying run at second base, I think. And like my wife, was just, what a tough moment for her. The camera's on her, and, you really don't want to be in that moment. It's not enjoyable. It's one of those you can't really win. I want my kid to have success, but my job is to coach. And so, you just do your job. And let what happens. They're either going to strike out, or they're going to get a hit, or they're going to get a home run. And so, and even if you look, last year against Louisville, so Ben strikes out to finish that game, and they end up losing. Of course, I eat with him about an hour and a half later over his grandparents' house. The next day, his very next at bat, I think. He hits a home run against us. Yeah. And he ends up hitting a little blue double at the end of the game, basically in the same situation, keep the rally alive and scores a run. And so as a parent, like for Cammie, of course, she's so happy for her son, but she doesn't really know how to act because, her husband's in the other dugout trying to win.
Sure.
So, it's one of those where she'll probably be happy if we don't have to play any of the other, brothers anymore.
You mentioned midnight when you text Drew, and I mean, even if I'm just covering the game or writing whatever, I need a little while to wind down. How do you wind down after you get home after a game? Is it just sitting in silence? You reading TV, having a glass of wine? What's sort of the deal there?
Usually not a lot of TV. I love to read, but not after a game. Yeah, usually I got to kind of wind down. And I'm not. If you know me, usually I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. So on baseball nights, I'm a little wired. So when I get home at probably get back to the house maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock. It's a little different, schedule for me. So usually, I don't eat before the game. So usually by the time I get home at 10:30, 11 o'clock, I haven't eaten since probably noon. And so usually I'm eating, get, something. We feed the team afterwards. So usually they, give me a box to go, and I'll go home and usually have a glass of wine. That helps. I shared that with Matt Luke. I said, hey, he said something, when he first got the interim job. I said, hey, buy a case of wine. That tends to help a lot after the games, win or lose.
Kami and Catherine know whether to stay up and wait on you or kind of give you a little space when you get in.
Yes, it's almost comical. Usually, if it's a big win on a Friday night, you can drive in. It's 11 o'clock and the lights are on. My dad will be there. He'll already have the wine poured or whatnot. If we lose on Friday night, the lights are off. I come in and everybody's already in bed. And so, you can pretty much tell if the Biancos won or lost. Just check out if the lights are on or off on Friday night.
What you do during the spring and summer without baseball? I mean, it's the first time in 30 years you haven't been on that type of schedule. I mean, what was it like just not having the office and the games every day?
Yeah, like everybody, it was tough. A lot of different things. I think when you ask a question, go through my mind. I think, originally you have a lot of self-pity. You feel sorry for yourself. You feel sorry for the people that you're closest to. I feel sorry for my team. I feel sorry for my kids, Ben and Drew, and, you feel sorry for Sam, who's a senior that missed out on a senior year and, prom and all these different things. But then there's another part of it where, like anything in life, through any adversity, and sounds so coach speak, but it's so true that, sometimes from all the bad, some good comes of it. And, hopefully, makes you better for the future. And I think part of that is now you said I haven't, but we've never really been with the kids, and we haven't really ate dinner with the kids outside of a Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, all 5 kids at one time. And so we went probably through about 2 months from time mid-March to into June, where we had all 5 kids, and including my father. My father lives out in our guest house out in the back. Eight of us at dinner every single night for 2.5 months. I mean, like, I don't remember that. Maybe that happened 12, 13 years ago when Michael was 12, my oldest, who's 25 now. So that was nice. That was nice to be with them, and nothing's on TV. And in some regards that stinks. In some regards it means you got to watch a movie together, or you got to play a game together. And then, as the weather got warmer, Cami got crazy, and now there was a lot of projects. And so a lot of cutting trees and painting houses and, landscaping and, basketball games, which were fun, but dislocated my finger and still not better yet. So they figured I probably tore a ligament in my finger, but better in the sense I can do anything, but it's still, I can't, bend it the way I used to. But just like everybody else, I mean, I think everybody has their stories, but I do appreciate, as bad as it was, I do appreciate the time to be able to spend, with our family. And thankfully, some of us got it and had the virus at some point in time.
Sure.
But thank God, none of us had it as bad as some people have had it. And it was nice to spend a lot of time with them.
I know you're trying to stay in the day. I mean, we talked about it on Tuesday. We're just saying how your team's got to be flexible. Does it worry you about what this thing looks like in the spring if you got fans in the stadium? I mean, do you feel like baseball, and I guess every sport to some extent, but is there a point where you worry about next season happening if you can't get full attendance or stadium, or just how everything works? I mean, how does that kind of go through your mind right now?
I don't want to say that we haven't given it a lot of thought. I think it's in the back of everybody's mind. We feel very confident. We've been on several SEC calls with the commissioner. He feels very confident. I shouldn't even say confident. I feel there's no way that we won't play.
Okay.
I mean, that's how confident. I mean, now what does that look like with as far as capacity? I don't know. But I would be shocked if we were still at like 25% the way football is now. I think like everything in life, it's, it's a learning process, right? And so, we're learning from football. Football's starting to have some adversity, obviously, this week, and you're starting to see that around. And I don't, it's not good, but I don't know if it's a surprise to anyone.
Sure.
And, this was bound to happen. But if you remember, Chase, a few months ago, when they started baseball, basketball and baseball started the professional, NBA and Major League started about the same time. Of course, basketball, because they could, because it was, just the end of the season, and because of the nature of the sport and the amount of guys, you could actually put them in a bubble. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You could put them, at Disney World, put them up in this fancy resort. They could do that. I don't know how you can do that with football. I don't know how you can do that with baseball and the amount of teams and the travel. I think they thought about it, doing it in Arizona and Florida at the spring training sites, but at that time, those were the hot spots. And so it almost seemed ridiculous to do it, that way. But if you remember the first few weeks of the baseball season at the end of July and early August, when the Marlins, who ended up making the playoffs, the Marlins got sick, and some of the protocols seemed very dumb and, not thought out. And the commissioner and a lot of people took a lot of heat from that. Well, baseball's, about to play in the World Series, right? In a couple days.
Sure.
Like they've gotten through it, and not without some instances, not without some games being pushed back and canceled, and double headers and a playoff where they actually eventually go to a bubble when they can, when they got enough teams, and to play every single day, which I think they admit the reason we're doing it is trying to get it done, trying to be done with it versus, the normal rest. And they've figured it out. I think football's going to learn just like that, we'll learn from them. We'll learn some of the mistakes that they've made. And then the other sports, and of course you got basketball coming up, but I feel very confident. That's a long answer, but I feel very confident that, we'll be playing, and I would be surprised if we didn't have a lot of people in the stands.
Pretty much last thing, and that's this for my own curiosity. I don't believe a lot of coaches when they go, yeah, absolutely. I'm in a shell. I don't read. I don't listen. You don't have any idea what we write and say half the time, do you? You really are pretty much in a bubble away from that, aren't you?
I don't know if it's a bubble. It's the bubble I prefer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, we were taught a long time ago, and this is no slight to you or any of the beat writers or people that do it, that, I think it's good when, I'm different than my daughter. If there's an article written about her, that's great, and it's something for the scrapbook. But there's something written about our baseball program every single day.
Sure.
And, at the end of the day, if you believe it when it's good, then you'll believe it when it's bad. And I think it's good for us not to just get caught up into that. I think what you do is very valuable, and you're terrific at what you do, because not only do you write, but you understand our game, and you try to go at different, I think, to look at it from different perspectives. And I think that's awesome. And I do read occasionally what you write, but it's usually somebody's got to put it in front of me. So I probably only read the things that you write good about me. But I also understand that that's what your job is. And I understand that what your job is and what my job is are two different things. Even though we come in contact and communicate a lot, they're two different things. And so, no, I don't do that. I don't follow a lot of people on Twitter. And without going on some long, rant, it's how I operate. And I don't need that. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to know everybody's opinion. I don't mean that my opinion is, can't change, or I can't hear from somebody else in respect, but I think there's too much of that now. And it's a shame. We live in a society where everybody thinks their opinion matters. No, it doesn't. Your opinion really doesn't, doesn't have to matter to me, and it doesn't have to matter to you. It can matter to you personally, but it doesn't have to matter to all the people. And we all should be respectful of how people feel. And because of the media and the social media now, and and it's not your blog, it's everything. It doesn't matter if it's Stephen A. Smith or so everybody has an opinion, and unfortunately, a lot of them are negative. And I think sometimes if you're in that world too much, that's not a good thing. You get a little guarded, you get a little edgy, and it's not healthy. And I think it's, I think sometimes it's good to step back and not have to hear what everybody thinks about, a game or your ability, and so on. So anyway, yeah, I guess if you want to call it a bubble, it's a bubble.
Spare me one more. Just kind of curious. Do you feel like this generation of player? I mean, I think you can say we've been through two generations or so as you've been coaching. Do you coach them differently? Is there a different anything to that? Is there ways you coach now that you kind of wish you'd have known 20 years ago? I mean, how do you think you've sort of evolved as communicator and coach over the last 2 decades?
Well, there's a lot of things. I think one of the things that I'm proud of is the system that you hear us talk about, and people call it culture now. It's just the in vogue thing. I mean, we use this phrase system because of I've been here too long, and that's how we call it. But one of the great things about our system is that it's evolved. It evolved when I was in it as a player and as an assistant coach. To watch Coach Bertman, the way he added its strength and conditioning, how he added the mental game to our program and our system. We've tried to do that over the years. I think the misnomer about one of the misnomers about our program is, hey, they've been there forever, this is the way they do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. There's things in our program that we've done for 20 years that are the same that when I was a player. But there's things that are drastically different, or the way we approach it, be it recruiting, be it the mental game, be it the analytics, whatever it is. As far as actual coaching and philosophy, those things have changed because, let's face it, kids have changed. Kids are different now than they were 20 years ago. I think they need more compliments. I think they need to, and maybe because of what we were just talking about, because of the negativity and because there's so much out there being judged and the pressure that they're under, there's much more eyes on them now than there were 20 years ago. When you look at Hayden Dunhurst and how many people know him and watch his every move in college baseball now. I'm not talking about the running back, right? I'm not talking about the point guard. I'm talking about college baseball. Think of Hayden Dunhurst and think of Carl Lafferty. And think of how much the game's changed, and what's the pressures on these kids. And because of all of that, I think we got to coach them a little different. But I think also you got to find that fine line in who you are and be true to yourself and true to the program. So I don't know if we're necessarily easier. I'm sure the guys 20 years ago will say, hey, you're easier. But I think we're more aware, I think, than we were 20 years ago. I think we're more accepting than we were 20 years ago. I think, I think we understand that, there's certain things that kids have been through that, we need to be aware of, and to make sure that, to get the most out of them, to get the most out of their ability so they can have, the career that they wanted here. I think, sometimes you got to change a little bit.
Well, I mean, the kids have to be tougher because, I mean, Hayden Dunhurst, like you said, things are getting written and said every single day. You got to ignore it. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a great thing in so many ways for your program, but it's treated like an SEC football program. I mean, they're under a microscope for everything they do, where if they get in trouble at 2:30 in the morning, I'm probably calling you at 8:30 to go, hey, what's up? It wasn't like that in 2002.
No, you're exactly right. And that's okay. I mean, because it's the society that they live in. Nobody's complaining, it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And we get that. And so, with that, there's a cost, but there's also a reward, right? They get the locker room that Hayden Dunhurst dresses in is a lot different than the locker room that Carl Lafferty dressed in. Right. The amount of shoes that Hayden Dunhurst gets, as part of the program is a lot different than what Carl Lafferty got. And so, nobody's complaining. All we're saying is it is different. But it's not just athletics.
Sure.
It's everything. It's the high school kids and what the pressures that they have, and it's different. And I think that's why every generation looks, and just because of technology and because you can do some things a little easier, right? doesn't mean that your life is necessarily easier. It means that, yeah, maybe you can put something in a microwave, or maybe you got, you can stream games and you can watch stuff on your phone, and technology's made a lot of things easier, but the life of an 18-year-old to 22-year-old kid is a lot more complicated than it used to be, a lot more difficult. And if you don't believe that, then you're not in touch with what's going on. But to be a teenager or be a young adult now is much more difficult, I think, than when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Again, one man's opinion.
Yeah. Well, appreciate it, Mike. Kept you a little longer than I meant to, and hopefully you get the rest of your fall in without issue.
Thanks, Chase. I appreciate it.